Hello, my name is Brendan Kersey, and in this video I'm going to show you how I made my ribbon emitter particle effect. So without further ado, let's get started. So for this one, I've followed the tutorial and went through things pretty well. From what I've seen, this is kind of a sort of a two emitter type particle. The first being our ribbon source, which for the material we just kind of made use and made a copy of. Let me show it. Kind of just made up a copy of our sprite material from our sprite emitter. And also we use the material from our beam emitter for our actual ribbons itself, just to kind of save on time. So for these, generally speaking, set up some of the basics, some initial size, a constant acceleration. That way they would kind of like rise up and then fall to the earth, kind of similar to our previous emitters. Side by speed, all of that setup is pretty standard, same as our last one. The new stuff for me was for the use of the ribbon data in order to actually construct the ribbon itself. So like I said, using the same materials as our beam, kind of changed some of the colors here. What is it? Color over lifetime. Give it a nice little blue particular. I kind of like that color, so it kind of stuck on the video. Um, One of the common things that I did learn, however, was how to make sure that kind of the end trails of some of these particles. Let me see if I can zoom this in. Make it just a little bigger. There we go. So one of the things you'll kind of notice is like we don't have a lot of end lag when it comes to the ends of these ribbons. Kind of follow like that right there. One of the things I learned that is if you lower the in value for the end trail, that's kind of what allows that to happen. So that's like a neat little effect in order to kind of clean up the particle effect itself. Um, Kind of standards. The other thing I learned was how to use the source module, in which I'm able to actively name and match my source to my particle. So this is how you actually attach the ribbon to the that's kind of like a light orangish bolts here coming down. So that's pretty standard. One thing I do kind of want to talk about is what I've done that's a bit different from the video. So on this other tab here, I kind of have opened the previous particle effect that was made in the tutorial. But there are a couple things I changed, and I'll kind of demonstrate the reason why. So if I go into here, here's my fixed particle effect here. I have it here in display, here in game, nice and neat. I'm going to turn this off for a brief second so I can kind of talk about some of the key differences. Let me just find that function. There we go. So check this on. There we go. So one of the key things that I found after making this tutorial is that if you'll notice, we take a closer look at these particles, you see kind of like these end trailing orange bits. It kind of looks like maybe our source, the way this is rendered, is like it's not fully fading out as the ribbon goes on. I thought that that kind of looked a little messy. So there were a couple things that I did kind of play around with the newer version that I have over here that kind of solved that issue. I'll turn it back on and then show you the kind of comparison. So you'll see here, you'll notice here it's kind of segmented as you look at each individual one. But then when you look at my fixed version, you obviously don't have that level of segmentation. So I'm going to kind of go over here real quick to talk about what I did to change and kind of fix some of that stuff. This doesn't show up in the tutorial itself, and I feel that probably the reason why this is apparent here is perhaps, this is a much newer version of the engine, so perhaps some of the rendering functionalities may have changed. So give me a brief moment. There we go. All right. So some of the things that I kind of did to kind of fix this was I played around. I changed my in my initial size for my source particle. I played around with the X, Y, and Z for the size itself. Kind of changed it around. So changed the X to 4 and the Y to 10. This kind of cleans up a couple things. So what this does is kind of like thins out the width of it slightly so that way it's not as apparent. One of the other things that this kind of does is that by taking the Y and converting that to a 10, what that does is it makes the actual source long enough to where it kind of like covers up some of that trailing render that I found. Um, Another kind of thing that I did with the initial size is I changed these values and make them a little thicker, so that way the beam itself kind of overlays on top of the source layer from the trail. Um, so that was just kind of a basic thing that I did to kind of fix that. I was kind of playing around a little with my initial velocity, kind of spanned out the X. That way it kind of makes like a wider arc for these to come on out, as well as my velocity itself. Kind of changed my Z to a nice 30 in these. So yeah, so that pretty much covers uh, my ribbon particle. Thanks for tuning in, and see you guys next time.